Yo, what's up guys? Welcome back to Audiobook Dynasty. If you want early access and even more parts for free, make sure to join me on Patreon. In the year 1521 of the Sea Circle calendar, at a marine branch base in the Sambas region of the East Blue, dozens of bounty hunters stood gathered in the hall. Normally rough and unruly, now they didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Each of them stared carefully and curiously at the bounty exchange window, at the young bounty hunter known as the Legend of the East Blue. His physique was as imposing as a towering iron pillar, the muscles beneath his clothes solid and powerful without appearing bulky. He radiated an overwhelming sense of strength even while standing still. Strapped to his back was a massive great sword, 2 meters long and half the width of a man, exuding a terrifying murderous aura. His thick hair fell in untamed waves, and his features were sharply cut. Some weren't sure if their eyes were playing tricks on them, but they seemed to see faint strands of black mist swirling around the young man, like the clinging presence of evil spirits. Cealan ignored the stares from the crowd, he was long used to it. Calculate this time's bounty for me. Cealan placed a black sack on the table, handing it over to the marine officer to count and confirm. Understood, Mr. Cealan. The marine responded respectfully, carefully pouring out the contents of the sack onto the table. 7 gruesome severed heads rolled out. The ferocious tiger Goro bounty of 4 million berries. The black serpent Kurabajin bounty of 5 million berries. The venomous beast Dakuga bounty of 4.5 million berries. With each head revealed, the marine's expressions grew more and more astonished. These were all notorious, bloodthirsty pirates who had slaughtered countless innocents while rampaging through the East Blue. The bounty hunters watching couldn't help but exclaim in shock at the sight of these heads. Some of them had once crossed blades with these pirates and naturally, had suffered defeat. Never in their wildest dreams had they imagined these pirates' heads would one day be displayed here at the marine base. Such a scene was something they had only seen in their dreams. Mr. Cealan, here's your bounty, a total of 30 million berries. The marine respectfully passed a briefcase through the window as he spoke. At the mention of this figure, all the bounty hunters gasped and stared at the briefcase with longing eyes. The combined bounties of the pirates they hunted together didn't even come close to this amount. But no one dared provoke Cealan, they all knew very well just how terrifying he truly was. 30 million, not bad. Cealan took the briefcase, weighed it casually in his hand, then turned and walked away. It wasn't until Cealan had completely left the hall that the marine base erupted into loud chatter. The bounty hunters and marines couldn't hold back their excitement and began discussing the event heatedly. Cealan returned to his ship and opened the briefcase. System, recharge. The berries inside the suitcase instantly vanished, as if they had never been there. Ding! Congratulations, host. Wealth value increased by 30 million. Hearing the system notification, a slight trace of concern appeared on Cealan's face. It's already been half a year since I crossed over. At this rate, it'll take me over 10 years just to complete synchronization. That's right. Cealan was not a native of this world. He came from another world, having inexplicably crossed into this perilous world in the flesh. A world rampant with pirates, ruled by the tyrannical celestial dragons, and controlled by a corrupt and incompetent world government. Any one of these forces could easily crush an ordinary man like him as if he were an ant. Fortunately, Cealan had been bound to the Heroic Spirit Synchronization System upon his arrival. At the start, he had drawn the SR template Berserker Class Heracles, the heroic spirit from Ilia's route in the Fifth Holy Grail War, known by countless fans as Berserker, the embodiment of true manliness. As long as he continued to embody the template's personality and traits, he could increase his synchronization rate and gain the power of the template. He could even spend berries to accelerate the synchronization process. Cealan understood well the dangers and excitement of the pirate world. He didn't want to be just another nameless soul, nor did he want to be a background character in this grand era. So, he made up his mind he would become stronger. Over the past half year, he had continuously aligned his behavior and combat style with the Berserker template while hunting down vicious pirates across the weaker seas of the East Blue. At the same time, he exchanged the pirates' heads for large sums of bounty money to further increase his synchronization. With this dual approach, his synchronization rate soared. Open system panel. Cealan muttered in his heart. A translucent light screen appeared in his mind. Host, Cealan Alaric. Template, Berserker Class Heracles. Synchronization rate, 30%. Berry, 15 million plus 30 million. Strength, B. Endurance, B. Agility, B. Magic power, B. Luck, A. Noble Phantasm, A+. Personal skills, Battle Continuation, B. Mind's Eye, Fake, B. Valor, A+. Divinity, A. Madness Enhancement, B. Noble Phantasms, God Hand, The 12 Labors, B. 9 Lives, Shooting the 100 Heads, C. A+. Looking at the panel before him, his synchronization rate had already reached 30%. In other words, he currently possessed 30% of the power of the Med warrior Heracles. This level of strength was already terrifying, enough to stand at the top among the 4 Emperor's core crews or be considered a potential candidate for Admiral at Marine Headquarters. In the weakest sea of the East Blue, his current strength made him practically invincible. More importantly, he had already unlocked Heracles' signature noble phantasm 12 labors. This weapon, born from the legendary 12 labors of Heracles, granted Cealan 12 lives, which could be restored over time after depletion. Compared to Marco's Phoenix Devil Fruit regeneration, the 12 labors were even more astonishing. System, consume 40 million wealth points to increase synchronization. The next moment, the system panel in his mind changed again. Host, Cealan Alaric. Template, Berserker Class Heracles. Synchronization rate, 34%. Berry, 5 million. At the same time, Cealan felt a tremendous surge of power flooding into his body. Memories began to emerge in his mind, the glorious legends of Heracles, the heroic feats of the 12 impossible trials. His already powerful physique strengthened further. Although his attribute ranks hadn't broken through to the next level, each stat increased by 10%. Every 10 million berries increases synchronization by 1%. To reach 100%, I'll need 660 million berries. Cealan frowned slightly. That number wasn't unreasonable, it was about the cost of a high-tier Paramecia-type devil fruit. But right now, he was still in the East Blue, and gathering that kind of money here would take considerable time. Over the past 6 months, Cealan had roamed across the East Blue, killing pirates wherever he went. Most of the truly dangerous ones had already been dealt with by his hand. The East Blue had now truly become the weakest of the 4 seas, with only a few scattered small-time pirates remaining. Of course, if Cealan chose to become a pirate himself, pillaging the weak and innocent, then not to mention 600 million, earning even 6 billion berries would be easy. But that went against the moral compass Cealan had developed in his previous life. He was just an ordinary person at heart. Cealan would not sacrifice himself to save the suffering masses, but neither would he slaughter innocents for convenience. Thus, he chose to become a bounty hunter hunting down vicious pirates. In each battle, he synchronized further with the Berserker Heracles template, then used the bounty rewards to increase his synchronization progress. It seems I'll need to head to the Grand Line as soon as possible. Cealan made his decision. He had already cleared out the starter zone that was the East Blue, there was no reason to linger. The pirates of the Grand Line were stronger and could give him proper fights. Their bounties were also far higher, many of them carrying hundreds of millions in bounty, along with vast treasure hoards. The next day, Cealan stretched his body. He had expended a lot of energy hunting down those pirates. It wasn't that they were particularly strong, but they had been too spread out across the sea. Well, time for a big meal and some relaxation. The sea restaurant Baritai was in this area, so there was no reason to miss out. Cealan took off the great sword from his back and swung it hard toward the sea behind him. A massive wave of sword energy roared out, creating a huge recoil that pushed Cealan's boat forward at high speed. In just 1 hour, Cealan spotted a fish-head-shaped ship carrying a green 2-story building. The sea restaurant Baritai had arrived. After securing his boat to the side of the Baritai, Cealan stepped into the famous restaurant of the East Blue. As soon as he entered, he saw the restaurant was nearly packed, the air filled with laughter and the rich aroma of seafood and various spices. Smells like the food here really lives up to its reputation. Cealan narrowed his eyes and nodded in approval. Oh? A guest with good taste. What would you like to order? Hearing Cealan's praise, Zeph, wearing his chef's hat and sporting 2 golden mustaches, took the initiative to greet him. Zeph, who had spent years on the Grand Line, could tell at a glance that Cealan was not an ordinary person. He was stronger than most of the pirates Zeph had encountered. Sanji, standing nearby with a cigarette in his mouth, widened his eyes. He had never seen the old man treat anyone so politely before. Bring me all your signature dishes. If that's not enough, keep them coming. Cealan didn't stand on ceremony. He could easily eat as much as several tables worth of diners. Ever since syncing with the Heracles template, his appetite was on par with a dimensional stomach. No matter how much he ate, it was never enough. Nani! We absolutely do not allow any food waste in this restaurant. Zeph immediately shouted. His early hardships had made him intolerant of wasting food, and he didn't care how special Cealan might be. No problem. That won't be an issue. Cealan smiled in response. He wouldn't waste a single bite. But his calm reply came off as a provocation to Zeph, as if Cealan were mocking the quality of the Baritai's food. In that case, I'll make sure you leave here clutching your stomach. Zeph snapped back with a glare. Sanji, give it everything you've got. Zeph grabbed Sanji and headed straight into the kitchen. Cealan casually found an empty seat, sat down, and leaned his great sword against the chair beside him. A few diners recognized Cealan and raised their glasses to him. Some pirates, terrified, quickly paid their bills and fled the restaurant. Cealan glanced at them and immediately saw they were just small fry with bounties of a few tens of thousands of berries. He couldn't be bothered with them. Old man, you're acting really weird today. Sanji felt something was off. This wasn't like the old man at all. Zeph shook his head and didn't explain. He simply pointed toward Cealan. What is it? Who the hell is that guy? Following Zeph's gesture, Sanji looked over and was stunned. The man had a lion-like build, wrapped in faint wisps of black mist, radiating an oppressive aura. The cheerful, lively dining atmosphere had gradually fallen silent, with Cealan at its center. The diners closest to him were visibly on edge, quickly finishing their meals and leaving in a hurry. Noticing Sanji staring at him, Cealan smiled. Ugh! Sanji shivered. Despite Cealan's handsome face, the pressure he exuded was nothing short of demonic. Now you see. Zeph gave Sanji a meaningful glance before turning to focus on the food. Sanji followed, putting his full effort into preparing the meal to meet Cealan's request. Am I really that scary? Cealan sighed to himself. The Heracles template naturally carried a berserk, fearsome aura. Even if he suppressed it, he couldn't completely avoid making others feel uneasy. Grilled steak, salt-grilled chicken skewers, signature shrimp, seafood soup. With Zeph and Sanji working together, the first round of dishes was quickly brought to Cealan's table. This is excellent. Cealan tasted the food carefully. He had to admit, the skills of these two chefs were truly impressive. In both his past and present life, he had rarely encountered cooking of this level. Though his eating manners were proper, his speed was astonishing. An entire table of dishes disappeared in moments. From the kitchen, Sanji and Zeph watched, their eyelids twitching. They hadn't expected Cealan's appetite to be so massive. The two of them returned to the stove, working quickly to prepare more dishes, replacing the empty plates at Cealan's table one after another. Just as Cealan was happily enjoying his meal, a group of uninvited guests entered the restaurant. Don Krieg, supported by Jin, limped into the Baritai. Their pirate crew had been devastated by Dracula Mihawk's blade and were in desperate need of supplies. Captain, let's get out of here. That's the strongest bounty hunter in the East Blue. The moment they entered, Jin recognized Cealan. The East Blue is too weak. The so-called strongest bounty hunter here is just another small fry. Krieg sneered. He was a pirate who had entered the Grand Line. But I'm too weak right now. I need to recover my strength first. Not long ago, he had encountered Mihawk, who sank 50 of his ships. Krieg had barely escaped with his life, only to be hounded by the Marines. He had been starving for over 10 days and was now completely exhausted. Desperate, Krieg lunged at a diner's table like a starving dog, shoving food into his mouth frantically. He needed to recover his strength as quickly as possible to avoid being an easy target for the bounty hunter. That's Don Krieg, the overlord of the East Blue, with a bounty of 17 million berries. Didn't the Krieg pirates already enter the Grand Line? How did they end up like this? Many of the restaurant's patrons recognized Krieg, and panic spread quickly. We're doomed. These are vicious pirates. Everyone knew Krieg's reputation. He was ruthless, despicable, and had taken countless lives. Even in his current pitiful state, no one dared question his strength. Cealan noticed Krieg's presence but didn't take him seriously. Instead, he focused on something else. If the story had reached this point, then Luffy and the others should be here as well. Sure enough, when Cealan glanced up, he saw the Straw Hat crew watching from the second floor. He had no particular interest in them, but since he planned to enter the Grand Line, he happened to be short of a navigator. With that in mind, Cealan subconsciously looked around for Nami. He spotted a slender figure quietly slipping out of the restaurant. Oh? Leaving so quickly? Cealan smiled to himself. It seemed there was still a chance. Wahaha! I'm back again. After eating and regaining some strength, Krieg laughed arrogantly. Now that he had recovered, he no longer feared Cealan, the so-called strongest bounty hunter of the East Blue. Krieg removed his outer jacket, revealing golden armor beneath. His spiked, mountain-like cape fluttered behind him. At that moment, his confidence returned, as if he had regained his former glory as the ruler of the East Blue. Hey, you over there! I'm talking to you. I'm Don Krieg, the big pirate with a bounty of 17 million berries. If you've got the guts, come and claim it. Wahaha! Krieg pointed directly at Cealan, planning to use the strongest bounty hunter of the East Blue as a stepping stone to reclaim his lost reputation. Faced with Krieg's provocation, Cealan simply smiled. He hadn't expected that just coming here for a meal would bring him some extra rewards. I really miss this. It's been a long time since a bounty came walking right to my doorstep. Cealan sighed, his eyes filled with nostalgia. Back when he first started making a name for himself in the East Blue, many pirates would come straight to him, hoping to use him as a stepping stone to fame. It was thanks to these reckless challengers that Cealan was able to quickly get through his early days. But after just 3 months at sea, this kind of pirate takeout delivery disappeared completely. Now, most pirates in the East Blue ran faster than rabbits whenever they heard his name. Many even changed their hideouts frequently, which greatly increased the difficulty of hunting them down. Don't get cocky. I'm the pirate fleet Admiral Krieg. Seeing Cealan's expression, Krieg felt like he was being treated like a joke. Furious, Krieg's armor twisted as 2 gun barrels extended from it. Die, brat! 2 cannon shells blasted towards Cealan. Krieg was full of confidence. With his equipment, he was undefeated in the East Blue. Countless enemies had fallen under the firepower of these cannons. The shells slammed into Cealan, kicking up a huge cloud of dust. Tch, boring. Cealan waved his hand, dispersing the dust. His body remained completely unscathed. This was the effect of the noble phantasm, God Hand, the 12 labors. Any attack below B rank could not harm him. Cealan had not even considered dodging such a weak attack. Haha, you fell for it, brat. This is a poison gas shell. Krieg sneered viciously. Although he looked down on Cealan, he still used his signature dirty tricks. That was the kind of despicable man Krieg was. No matter who his opponent was, he always struck first with underhanded tactics. Damn it, how shameless! Sanji, watching from the kitchen, was about to rush out to help. Stay put. Krieg is no match for him. Zeph stopped Sanji. He firmly believed that Cealan, the man who had shaken even him, would not lose to Krieg. It's useless. Cealan shook his finger. This poison gas didn't even reach B rank. It was completely ineffective against the 12 labors. Krieg didn't give up. Dirty tricks weren't his only weapon. He pulled out a golden warhammer and charged towards Cealan. Watch out! Krieg is incredibly strong. That weapon weighs a ton. The diners hiding nearby couldn't help but call out a warning. Cealan casually picked up the great sword resting beside him and swung it at Krieg. When it came to brute strength, no one could compare to Cealan. He possessed the synchronization of Heracles, the legendary hero of Greek mythology. The giant sword and golden hammer clashed in midair. Krieg immediately felt an overwhelming force. The golden hammer was cut in half instantly. The great sword continued downward, slicing through Krieg's golden armor. Finally, the blade drove into Krieg's abdomen, pinning him firmly to the floor. How can he be so strong? Krieg lay on the ground, gasping for air. He could never have imagined such strength existed in the East Blue. The power behind that sword swing was something he could not hope to withstand. Defeated in one strike. It took the diners a while to react. Many of them couldn't believe what they were seeing. Krieg had been the self-proclaimed overlord of the East Blue. Everyone here knew his reputation. Some had experienced his cruelty firsthand and were well aware of how terrifying he was. This was a pirate who had destroyed marine bases and rampaged unchecked across the East Blue. But now, he had been defeated in a single blow by Cealan, unable to fight back at all. Both the strongest in the East Blue, but the gap between them is this big. Krieg was known as the strongest pirate in the East Blue. Cealan was known as the strongest bounty hunter. Even if one lost, no one expected the difference to be so overwhelming. Yet Cealan had brought Krieg down with just one strike, leaving him barely clinging to life. Jin, seeing his captain defeated, gritted his teeth and charged at Cealan. Too weak. In Cealan's eyes, Jin's movements were slower than a turtle's. He casually threw a punch, knocking Jin out cold. Under the stunned gaze of everyone present, Cealan placed a bag of berries on the table, then carried Krieg and Jin out of the restaurant. Docked nearby was Krieg's flagship, still crewed by over 100 of his pirates. It's too much trouble to haul them all away. Might as well wipe them out right here. The pirates on the ship were all small fry. Many didn't even have bounties. Cealan had no interest in identifying them one by one. Besides, the Krieg pirates were infamous across the East Blue for their brutality and crimes. Their deaths would not be a loss to anyone. Cealan focused his mind and swung his great sword toward the massive ship. The slash roared out like thunder crashing down upon the earth. With the Heracles synchronization, even though the berserker form of Heracles had lost the godlike martial arts of his sane state, his instinctual combat ability was still engraved deep in his bones. After half a year of practice, Cealan had combined the swordsmanship of the pirate world with his template, finally stepping into the realm of a true swordsman. He could cut through steel and unleash devastating flying slashes. With just his swordsmanship alone, he could dominate the first half of the Grand Line. The pressure of the slash, dozens of meters long, blasted out from the great sword, splitting the pirate ship into pieces. The entire crew aboard was killed instantly, the sea stained red with blood. Overhead, a news crew flew by, capturing this terrifying scene with its camera. The immense force of the slash shocked everyone in the restaurant. Even far out at sea, flocks of seabirds were startled into flight. Dracul Mihawk, standing on his small raft, suddenly stood up and looked toward the direction of the Baritai. There's such a powerful swordsman in the East Blue. The presence behind that slash was enough to qualify as a worthy opponent. Mihawk stabbed the black blade Yoru into the water, using it as a paddle to steer quickly toward the floating restaurant. Cealan, unaware that Mihawk was coming for him, carried Krieg and Jin straight to the nearest marine base. Back at the Baritai, the stunned diners finally stepped outside to check the situation. When they saw Krieg's flagship completely destroyed, their shock deepened. This level of strength shouldn't exist in the East Blue. Zeph had not seen such a formidable fighter in many years. Even at his peak, he was certain he couldn't compare to Cealan. Beside him, Sanji was also speechless. At some point, the cigarette in his mouth had fallen to the floor. Born into the Vinsmoke family, Sanji clearly understood how terrifying Cealan's power was. That presence was even more overwhelming than his father, Vinsmoke Judge. Luffy and Zoro were just as shaken. They were new to the seas, and this was their first time witnessing such strength. Shug. I want to be even stronger than him. I'm going to be the Pirate King. Luffy's fighting spirit remained high. True to his nature, he would not be discouraged. Oh no, Boss Luffy, Boss Zoro. At that moment, Zoro's two crewmates rushed over, panic written all over their faces. Miss Nami took the ship and all our treasure. They had been so distracted by Cealan's overwhelming power that they hadn't noticed Nami quietly sailing away. Nani! Both Luffy and Zoro shouted in shock. Just as Luffy was about to chase after her, a white chef's hat smacked into the back of his head. Idiot, you still have to work here to pay off your debt for the damage. Zeph knocked Luffy on the head and dragged him back into the kitchen. Since Cealan had already taken care of the Krieg pirates, Luffy and the others hadn't yet formed a deep bond with Zeph or Sanji. It would take some time before they could leave. Cealan steered his boat toward the marine branch base in the Samba Sea. Just 2 hours earlier, he had exchanged bounty rewards at this very base. He hadn't expected to catch 2 big fish in the time it took to enjoy a meal. Krieg was worth 17 million berries, and Jin was worth 11 million berries. After I turn in this bounty, maybe I should go back for another meal. Who knows, maybe more big fish will show up if I eat there again. Ha ha ha. Cealan couldn't help but laugh at the thought. At the Baritai in the Samba Sea, Mihawk's small raft floated on the waters, surrounded by shipwreck debris. Mihawk picked up a piece of shattered timber, closed his eyes, and used observation haki to sense the lingering traces of battle. After a moment, Mihawk opened his eyes. Good swordsmanship. Impressive power. In terms of swordsmanship itself, it was excellent. Though still a level below Mihawk's own mastery, the power behind the strikes at the scene had earned his recognition. Compared to the monsters of the Beast's pirates, this swordsman was not far behind. It seems I may have a worthy opponent in the future. Mihawk smiled faintly. He acknowledged Cealan's potential. However, for now, Mihawk had no intention of testing him. The man was still a bit too inexperienced. On the other side, after sailing for another hour, Cealan returned once again to the marine branch base. Carrying Jin and Krieg with him, Cealan walked straight in. Isn't that Mr. Cealan? Didn't he just come here this morning? Several bounty hunters gathered in the hall whispered to each other, looking at Cealan with puzzled expressions. These bounty hunters had come in earlier that morning to turn in their own bounties, and they were still here, bragging about their exploits. For them, any bounty exchange wasn't complete without a few hours of storytelling. He probably just picked off a few small-time pirates somewhere. One tall, thin bounty hunter said sourly. He didn't believe Cealan could have gained anything significant in just a few hours. That's Don Krieg, and his top officer, the Mandemon Jin. A bounty hunter suddenly shouted, immediately drawing everyone's attention. It's true. How is that possible? That's a big-name pirate with a bounty in the tens of millions. The bamboo-thin bounty hunter was completely dumbfounded, staring at Cealan as if looking at a monster. The jealousy he had felt toward Cealan earlier vanished completely, replaced by respect and fear. Cealan had wiped out the Krieg pirates, eliminating a major scourge of the East Blue. That alone earned their respect. But what truly frightened them was Cealan's overwhelming strength. Taking down Krieg so easily meant that killing any of them would be effortless for him. The bamboo-thin bounty hunter made up his mind to stay at the marine base for now, hoping it would be safer. He didn't realize that Cealan didn't even consider someone like him worth noticing. For Cealan, such small-time characters were not even worth the time it would take to look at them. Hearing the commotion, the marine officer at the bounty exchange window quickly rushed over to Cealan. Capturing 2 pirates worth tens of millions in just 3 hours was simply unbelievable. After a careful inspection, the marine confirmed their identities. The former overlord of the East Blue was now a corpse, and his top subordinate lay unconscious beside him. Mr. Cealan, thank you for your help in eliminating this threat from the East Blue. The Marine saluted Cealan respectfully, his voice loud and clear. There was even a trace of regret in his eyes. Why wouldn't someone like Cealan consider joining the Marines? The branch's commanding officer had already invited him several times, but Cealan had refused every offer. I'll extend the invitation again. I sincerely hope you will consider joining the Marines. Headquarters is willing to appoint you as a captain. The Marine tried once more. What if this time Cealan agreed? The surrounding bounty hunters all gasped, their eyes nearly popping out of their heads. The rank of captain in the Marines meant command of a branch base in the East Blue, with hundreds of subordinates, a patrol ship, and countless hidden benefits. The bounty hunters stared at Cealan, practically wishing they could agree on his behalf. No need. I'm used to my freedom. Without the slightest hesitation, Cealan decisively turned down the offer. The bounty hunters were stunned. Such favorable terms, rejected so easily. But Cealan would never allow himself to be shackled. The Marines were nothing more than a tool of the world government, bodyguards for the celestial dragons. Many righteous men had joined with ideals, only to become disillusioned after witnessing the corruption of the world government. Cealan would never allow himself to walk that path. He had come to this world with the Heroic Spirit Synchronization System. Was it just to find a master and remain a servant? Becoming a bounty hunter suited him far better. Free to sail the seas and kill those who angered him. Cealan waved his hand. Under the stunned gazes of everyone, he left the Marine base with 28 million berries. The Marines remained behind with the bounty hunters, reporting this explosive news through their chain of command. After Cealan left, the news of his annihilation of the Krieg pirates spread across the entire East Blue. Within a day, every major newspaper printed the story, featuring Cealan escorting Krieg and Jin on the front page. Some of the more influential papers even managed to obtain images of Cealan destroying Krieg's pirate ship. Extra, extra. Get your papers here. Cealan, the strongest bounty hunter in the East Blue, makes a shocking move. Pirate fleet Admiral Krieg defeated. The Krieg pirates wiped out. The young newspaper boys shouted on the streets, while passers-by stopped in their tracks, unable to believe what they were hearing. Give me a copy. The newspapers sold out immediately, the explosive news spreading like wildfire. Ha ha ha. That bastard Krieg is finally gone. Back when the Krieg pirates were at full strength, they commanded 50 ships and over 5,000 men. They burned, killed, and looted across the East Blue, destroying countless families. Now, thousands of ordinary people laughed and cheered at the news of their downfall. Their gratitude towards Cealan for ending Krieg's reign of terror was immeasurable. At the same time, bounty hunters all across the East Blue were stirred up. He's incredible. Cealan is just too powerful. Every bounty hunter was in awe of Cealan's accomplishment. His success was something they couldn't even dream of reaching. As bounty hunters themselves, they were still struggling to take down pirates with bounties in the hundreds of thousands. And even then, they bragged about it for days afterward. I remember this guy only appeared about half a year ago. One bounty hunter muttered to himself, wondering if his memory was playing tricks on him. That's right. Half a year ago, he was like the rest of us, only going after small-time pirates with bounties of a few 100,000. And now, he's hunting down big-name pirates worth tens of millions. Another bounty hunter stared blankly, unable to understand how anyone could grow so fast. It looks like another powerhouse is about to rise in the Grand Line. A seasoned bounty hunter spoke quietly, sensing what was to come. With Cealan's talent and strength, he was clearly not someone who would remain confined to the East Blue. He was destined to head for the Grand Line, to challenge the monsters who ruled those seas. Navy office in the East Blue. Excellent, excellent. That bastard Krieg is finally dead. Colin laughed heartily. He popped open a bottle of champagne and toasted with several of his subordinates to celebrate. The Krieg pirates had burned, looted, and committed countless atrocities across the East Blue, leaving the people filled with anger and resentment. Their existence had caused an extremely negative impact. Colin was originally due for promotion to Rear Admiral and a transfer back to Marine Headquarters for advanced training. However, because of Krieg's rampage, the promotion was delayed, and he was even reprimanded by Fleet Admiral Sengoku. Frustrated, Colin had dispatched forces multiple times, but Krieg's cunning always allowed him to escape. Now that the Krieg pirates had been wiped out by Cealan, it was no wonder Colin was in the mood to celebrate with champagne. Still, this Cealan really is impressive. Colin held the newspaper in his hand, staring at the strong and handsome figure printed on the front page, his expression filled with emotion. Half a year ago, he had just appeared and was only able to handle pirates with bounties in the hundreds of thousands. Now, just half a year later, he has grown to this level, easily wiping out the Krieg pirates. Several subordinates reviewed Cealan's intel and had never seen such an astonishing rate of growth. In just 6 months, he went from a rookie bounty hunter to the nightmare of pirates. Even I am no match for him. Colin fell silent for a moment before finally speaking. In his hand was a photo, capturing the moment Cealan destroyed a pirate ship with a single slash. Several subordinates had initially wanted to offer words of praise, but when they recalled the terrifying image of that ship being cut apart, they found themselves unable to say anything flattering. Even though they knew Cealan was an elite trained at Marine headquarters, possessing the strength of a rear admiral, none of them believed Cealan could defeat Cealan. He has already reached the level of a true swordsman. Among the vice admirals at headquarters, few have reached that realm. Cealan drained the champagne from his glass, his heart filled with complicated emotions. Having specialized in swordsmanship himself, he could clearly see the depth of Cealan's skill. Despite years of training, he could not match Cealan's half-year rise. Is this what it means to be a genius? Cealan's performance reminded him of his former classmates, the three admirals who now stood as the highest combat power of the world government. Back in Zephyr's training camp, the gap between Cealan and those three had been like an uncrossable chasm. He could only look up to them. Now, after so many years, Cealan once again brought back that bitter feeling of being crushed by true talent. Seeing Cealan's gloomy expression, none of his subordinates dared to speak. They held their wine glasses quietly, as if they were truly savoring the champagne. The office fell into an uncomfortable silence. After a while, Cealan collected himself. Pass down my orders. Any Marine branch in the East Blue that encounters Cealan must extend an invitation. Offer him at least the rank of Commodore. I will personally apply to Marine headquarters to recruit him at any cost. Cealan's tone was firm, filled with determination. Such a terrifying genius was clearly destined to become a central figure in this era. If they could recruit Cealan into the Marines, it was very likely they would gain another admiral-level powerhouse in the near future. Thinking of the shortage of top talent in the current generation of the Marines, Cealan became even more eager to see Cealan join their ranks. He even imagined that if Cealan one day rose to become an admiral, his own status would rise along with him. Several subordinates were stunned when they heard Cealan's decision. Offering the rank of colonel right from the start was almost unheard of. There had never been such a precedent in the Marines. But when they thought back to the newspaper's description of Cealan destroying a flagship with a single slash, they felt it was justified. Understood, Captain Cealan. We'll notify the branches immediately. The subordinates turned and left, leaving Cealan alone in his office, deep in thought. On the other side, Cealan, whose name had shaken the entire East Blue, was sailing quietly across the sea. On his boat, Cealan opened the box containing the bounty rewards and recharged 28 million berries into the system. Looking at the system panel, Cealan felt a bit disheartened. Host, Cealan Alaric. Template, Berserker Class Heracles. Synchronization rate, 34%. Berry, 5 million plus 28 million. Strength, B. Endurance, B. Agility, B. Magic power, B. Luck, A. Noble Phantasm, A+. Personal skills, Battle Continuation, B. Mind's Eye, Fake, B. Valor, A+. Divinity, A. Madness Enhancement, B. Noble Phantasms, God Hand, The 12 Labors, B. 9 Lives, Shooting the 100 Heads, C. A+. Fighting an opponent like that doesn't improve me at all. Cealan sighed. When he first started out, battling pirates with bounties of tens of thousands helped increase his synchronization rate. As the bounty levels of his opponents rose into the hundreds of thousands and then millions, he continued to make progress. But now, even defeating Krieg, with his 17 million berry bounty, had done nothing to increase his synchronization. Cealan understood why. A one-hit kill like that couldn't possibly help him improve. If he wanted to gain synchronization through battle, it would have to be against an opponent who could at least survive a few exchanges. A drawn-out fight, not an instant defeat. Consume 30 million berries to increase synchronization. The system panel blurred for a moment, then updated. Host, Cealan Alaric. Template, Berserker Class Heracles. Synchronization rate, 37%. Berry, 3 million. Strength, B upward arrow. Endurance, B upward arrow. Agility, B upward arrow. Magic power, B upward arrow. Luck, A. Noble Phantasm, A+. Personal skills, Battle Continuation, B. Mind's Eye, Fake, B. Valor, A+. Divinity, A. Madness Enhancement, B. Noble Phantasms, God Hand, The 12 Labors, B. 9 Lives, Shooting the 100 Heads, C. A+. Cealan's stats had improved again, though there was still a long way to go before reaching the next rank. Every 25% synchronization brings a qualitative change. If I want a real breakthrough, I still need another 13%. Cealan calculated carefully. With just 130 million berries, he could steadily push his synchronization rate to 50%. If he could find stronger opponents, that progress could be accelerated even further. There's no one like that left in the East Blue. Looks like it's time to head to the Grand Line. Cealan made up his mind. He would head for the Grand Line as soon as possible. There, he would find more breathtaking sights and much stronger enemies. But the Grand Line's climate was unpredictable, and the journey was filled with danger. Without an excellent navigator, even setting sail would be nearly impossible. So, my navigator needs to be in place first. Thinking of Nami, who had slipped away from the Baritai, Cealan smiled faintly. He steered the boat, occasionally swinging his sword across the sea to maintain speed, heading straight for Kokoyasi village. Kokoyasi village was also located in the Sambas region, not far from Cealan's current location. A small boat sped across the sea, occasionally releasing a burst of white energy from the rear cabin, the recoil propelling the vessel forward at high speed. After several hours of sailing, Cealan was getting closer and closer to Kokoyasi village. A small island began to take shape about 1,000 meters ahead. Very good. Looks like we're almost there. Cealan smiled. In order to intercept Luffy and secure Nami as his navigator, Cealan had set off immediately after turning in his last bounty. He steered the boat toward the shore. On the beach, Cealan spotted a familiar figure. Nami, with her short orange hair and slender figure, sat sobbing softly on the sand. Why? I already collected 100 million berries, so why won't they let the village go? Nami felt like all of her past efforts had been nothing but a cruel joke. She had spent 8 long years working to gather 100 million berries, drawing sea charts for the Arlong pirates. 8 years of hardship, all ending in Arlong's cruel betrayal. And that damned rat of a marine, Captain Nezumi, who was supposed to be the law, but was actually colluding with Arlong. So naive. Pirates don't keep promises. Ha ha ha. I never planned to give the village back to you. From now on, every villager will keep paying me 100,000 berries every month. And you, Nami, will keep drawing sea charts for me. I'm not going anywhere. Arlong's ugly fishman face repeated over and over in Nami's mind, stabbing into her heart like a knife. I knew it all along. Why was I so stupid, to believe the words of a pirate? Nami cried out, her teeth clenched in hatred. Her hatred for Arlong had reached its peak. 8 years ago, her adoptive mother Belmere had been killed by Arlong to protect her. For 8 years, the Arlong pirates had squeezed the village dry. Anyone who failed to pay was killed without mercy. And the villagers? Everyone is doing their best to fight back, but how could they possibly defeat Arlong? Thinking of the villagers, armed only with hoes and kitchen knives, standing up against the Arlong pirates, Nami's despair deepened. Everyone will die. Her tears continued to fall as hopelessness weighed on her heart. Those kind and innocent villagers, her sister Nojiko, they would all be slaughtered by Arlong. She hated him more than anything, yet felt completely powerless. There was no warmth left under the bright sunlight. This pirate world was too cold, too cruel. If only someone, anyone, would come to help. Even if it was a devil, she was willing to give anything. Nami prayed silently in her heart. At that moment, a calm and magnetic voice reached her ears. Hey, how do I get to the Arlong pirates' base? Nami looked up and saw a figure standing before her. He had a handsome face, a tall, strong build radiating great power, and faint strands of black aura swirling around him. He looked like a demon incarnate. It's you, the strongest bounty hunter in the East Blue. Nami's dead heart suddenly came alive again. She had seen Cealan once before at the Baritai. Back then, Krieg had confronted Cealan, and Nami had slipped away amidst the chaos. The next day, she had seen the news. The infamous Admiral Krieg had been killed by Cealan, and the Krieg pirates were annihilated. Nami had even fantasized about how wonderful it would be if Cealan could come to Kokoyasi village. Before Krieg's defeat, she had already heard the rumors about Cealan. Known as the strongest bounty hunter in the East Blue, countless ruthless pirate crews had been destroyed by his hand. Unfortunately, he was known for wiping out all pirates in a region before moving on, so she hadn't dared to hope. Had been too afraid that Arlong would kill her before she even had the chance. At that time, she had still believed in Arlong's lie, clinging to the hope that 100 million berries would buy the village's freedom. Now, all she felt was regret. If only she had given that 100 million berries to Cealan back then, Kokoyasi village might have been saved long ago. Mr. Cealan, please, help us eliminate the Arlong pirates. I'm willing to give anything, even my life. Nami wiped her tears away, her expression firm as she bowed deeply to Cealan. For the sake of the villagers, for revenge against Arlong, she was prepared to sacrifice everything. All right. Lead the way. Cealan nodded calmly, without making any grand gestures or declarations. He fully intended to make Nami his navigator, and the bounty and treasure from the Arlong pirates were exactly what he needed. Thank you, Mr. Cealan. Nami's heart surged with hope. At that moment, the man before her, wrapped in black aura, looked like a shining hero in her eyes. Nami walked ahead, leading the way and explaining the situation with the Arlong pirates to Cealan as they went. Mr. Cealan, the Krieg pirates you defeated before were called the overlords of the East Blue. But in reality, the Arlong pirates are the strongest pirate force in the East Blue. Their leader, Arlong, is a big-name pirate who returned from the Grand Line with a bounty of 20 million berries. Nami's expression was serious. She knew all too well how terrifying the Arlong pirates were. Back when Krieg led 50 pirate ships into the Grand Line, they were nearly wiped out in just 7 days. Only one main ship returned. Arlong and his crew had spent years surviving in the Grand Line. Their strength was definitely above that of the Krieg pirates. Yet, Cealan responded with a nod, his expression indifferent. I know you can defeat Arlong, but he has several officers helping him. They're all fishmen. They're much stronger than humans. Nami's voice trembled slightly, anxious that Cealan might be underestimating them. Don't worry. They're no match for me. Seeing Nami's concern, Cealan gave a soft reassurance. To be honest, he had never taken the Arlong pirates seriously. They were nothing more than thugs who bullied the weak and cowered before the strong. After losing their backing in the Grand Line, they had come to the East Blue just to scrape by. If it were Jinbei, one of the 7 warlords of the sea, Cealan would have considered the fight seriously. But Arlong was nothing more than a waste, just like Krieg, defeated with a single strike. Still, please be careful. Nami, born and raised in the East Blue, had been oppressed by the Arlong pirates since childhood. If you find you can't beat him, please run. Just escape. Nami bit her lower lip as she forced the words out. Her fear of Arlong was deeply rooted. Even though Cealan's reputation was terrifying, she couldn't help but worry. She was prepared for the possibility of failure. Don't worry so much. To me, the Arlong pirates are nothing but a small problem. Cealan held up 2 fingers, leaving only a tiny gap between them. They're about this much of a challenge. That's great, haha. Nami forced a smile, though her anxiety remained. In her mind, Arlong and Cealan were probably evenly matched. Arlong was the strongest pirate in the East Blue, and Cealan was the strongest bounty hunter. Even if there was some difference in strength, it couldn't be that big. Plus, with Arlong's officers helping him, Nami thought Cealan's chances of winning weren't very high. She had never left the East Blue, and her worldview was still too limited. Though she had seen the newspaper photo of Cealan slicing apart a large ship with a single slash and knew he was powerful enough to dominate the East Blue, she had no idea that such strength was enough to establish a foothold in the Grand Line. With that power alone, he could easily qualify as one of the 7 warlords of the sea. The mighty Arlong, in her eyes a terrifying monster, was no more than an insect to Cealan. Outside Arlong Park, hundreds of villagers lay defeated on the ground, while a dozen fishmen surrounded them, laughing and mocking. Even though the villagers had known they would lose, they hadn't expected to lose so miserably. They had gathered the strength of the entire village, yet they had not even seen Arlong himself. It had taken less than 5 minutes for just one of Arlong's subordinates to defeat them all. The physical strength of fishmen was several times greater than that of ordinary humans. The villagers had no way to resist. Were the Arlong pirates truly invincible? The villagers lay there, eyes dull and filled with despair. Hang these inferior humans from the flagpoles and let them dry to death. Let the rest of the island see what happens to those who dare resist. Kurubi's face twisted with cruelty as he gave the order without hesitation. Inside Arlong Park, Captain Nezumi and Arlong were drinking happily on the balcony. Having just received 100 million berries from Nami, the massive sum had put both of them in a good mood. Watching Nami's expression of anger and desperation, neither of them felt the slightest guilt. Instead, they found satisfaction in her suffering. Arlong, are you planning to destroy another village? If headquarters gets wind of this, it could be troublesome. Looking down at the defeated villagers, Captain Nezumi frowned slightly. Arlong had already destroyed several villages, adding up to nearly 10,000 people. A disappearance of that scale could easily attract attention from higher up in the Marines. Relax. Your cut will be increased by 20%. After 8 years of cooperation, Arlong had already figured Nezumi out. Human lives meant nothing to him. The only thing Nezumi cared about was money. In that case, happy cooperation. Nezumi nodded in satisfaction, his ugly face looking even more despicable. As long as the money was right, there was no problem. If anyone from above asked questions, they could simply claim that other pirates had raided the village and that the Marines had arrived too late. Wait, that little thief girl is back, and she brought someone with her. That's... Nezumi's eyes widened in shock. It's the strongest bounty hunter. He's here for us. Nezumi's first instinct was to run. He had heard all about Cealan's reputation. Cealan was powerful and ruthless toward evil. Not long ago, Nezumi had even received orders from his superiors to try recruiting Cealan into the Marines. If Cealan discovered his collusion with the Arlong pirates, Nezumi knew he was finished. What are you so afraid of? He's just another rookie from the East Blue. I'm a big-name pirate who returned from the Grand Line. Arlong sneered. He did not believe anyone from the East Blue could be truly strong. In his eyes, the so-called strongest bounty hunter was just another overconfident ant. If he dares meddle in my business, I'll make sure he disappears. But he won't even get past my men. Arlong was confident in the strength of his fishmen. They were elite soldiers brought directly from Fishman Island, with physical abilities far surpassing those of ordinary humans. His 3 officers were all former members of the Sun Pirates, just like him. In Arlong's opinion, any one of them could easily defeat Krieg. That's good. Let's make the so-called strongest bounty hunter vanish right here. Nezumi forced himself to calm down, shifting his attention back to the battlefield below. Outside Arlong Park. Release the villagers right now. The one standing next to me is the strongest bounty hunter in the East Blue. Nami glared at the fishman holding the villagers captive, her heart burning with rage. She wished she could kill every last one of the Arlong pirates. But across from them stood more than a dozen tall fishmen, including the 3 officers of the Arlong pirates. On Nami's side, there was only her and Cealan. The difference in numbers was overwhelming. Suppressing her anger, Nami tried to use Cealan's reputation to intimidate the fishmen and rescue the villagers peacefully. Ha ha ha. The strongest bounty hunter in the East Blue? You're scaring us so much. I thought it was one of the 7 warlords of the sea. The fishmen all burst into laughter. Having returned from the Grand Line, they only feared true monsters like the 4 emperors or the warlords of the sea. Nami, stay back. You're no match for these fishmen. The villagers, still lying on the ground, were completely hopeless. Hundreds of them together hadn't been able to stand up to even one fishman. What could Nami and Cealan possibly do? The villagers grew more anxious. They were ready to die but didn't want Nami to throw her life away too. Sir, please take Nami and leave. Don't worry about us. The village guard captain, Genzo, looked desperate as he pleaded with Cealan. The other villagers shared the same thought. Nami had endured 8 years of humiliation to save them. They couldn't bear the thought of her dying here. A kind girl like Nami deserved to live a better life. Only Nami's sister, Nojiko, still held hope in her heart. She had read the newspaper with Nami, seeing the photo of Cealan destroying an entire pirate ship with a single strike. While the Arlong pirates were certainly strong, Nojiko felt they were nowhere near that level of power. Maybe, just maybe, even Arlong was not a match for this man. But the fishmen did not share that fear. They had surrounded Cealan and Nami, with the 3 officers of the Arlong pirates watching Cealan closely. Though they scoffed at Cealan's reputation, their eyes were not blind. They could see the power in his strong body, and the black aura swirling around him made them uneasy. Leave the girl here, and we'll let you go. Kurubi spoke first, eyeing Cealan with caution. If possible, he would rather avoid fighting someone like Cealan. Even if they won, they would likely suffer losses. Next to him, the octopus fishman Haki waved his 6 arms, each holding a sword, cutting a nearby tree into pieces. The smooch fishman Chu opened his mouth wide and fired water bullets, smashing another tree to splinters. The other fishmen stretched their bodies, showing off their fishman karate. Clearly, they were trying to intimidate Cealan. Well? Are you scared? Walk away now, and we might let you leave alive. Kurubi spoke proudly. This was their signature technique, and they were confident in it. The villagers looked on, stunned, growing even more fearful of the fishman's strength. Nami's expression changed as she listened. She turned to glance at Cealan nervously, worried he might back down. But she had no intention of blaming him if he chose to leave. This wasn't his fight, after all. Whether he stayed or walked away was his choice. Seeing that Cealan's expression remained unchanged, Nami felt a slight sense of relief. She quietly made up her mind. If they survived this, she would give everything she had to repay Cealan. Actually, I'm not scared at all. It's just that you're far too weak. The fishman's intimidating display, which terrified the villagers, was nothing but a clown show in Cealan's eyes. Heracles had mastered countless martial arts, transcending the limits of human skill and reaching the realm of the divine. Even though much of that skill was lost in his berserker state, the fighting instinct remained deeply engraved. To Cealan, the fishman's martial arts were better than the sloppy fighting of the Krieg pirates, but they still looked like children playing at combat. So, you really intend to fight us? Hearing Cealan's calm mockery, Kurubi's face grew serious as he confirmed Cealan's intent once more. Cealan did not bother responding with words. Trash like this did not deserve his explanations. Instead, he reached back and slowly removed the massive greatsword from his back, his action alone expressing his answer. The villagers and Nami stared at him with growing worry. But Nojiko's eyes lit up. She remembered the photo in the newspaper. The slash that had destroyed Krieg's flagship was not something these fishmen could withstand. Since you're so determined to die, we'll give you a quick death. Seeing Cealan's contemptuous attitude, Kurubi and the other fishmen were enraged. Given the long-standing tension between humans and fishmen, they rarely offered humans any respect. After arriving in the East Blue, the Arlong pirates had acted lawlessly, never once fearing any human. Now, despite offering a chance to back down, they were met with only disdain and mockery. They were wary of Cealan's strength, but they were not afraid to fight him. Inferior human, die! Kurubi charged forward, throwing a powerful straight punch. That's the strongest punch. It can smash through 1,000 tiles with a single blow. The nearby fishmen soldiers were excited. It had been a long time since they had seen Kurubi unleash this move. It was the most powerful strike in fishman karate, abandoning fancy techniques to fully capitalize on the raw strength of the fishman body. With their physical strength several times greater than that of humans, this move was devastating when executed by a fishman. The fishman soldiers had witnessed it before. Even pirates with bounties of 8 million berries had died from this punch, their internal organs shattered, blood pouring from every orifice. As Kurubi's fist swung forward, Nami, standing beside Cealan, felt the intense force carried by the strike. Her pupils contracted as she instinctively wanted to dodge, but the overwhelming pressure of the punch rooted her to the spot. She looked at Cealan nervously, unsure how he would handle it. Facing this fierce attack, Cealan did not dodge. He simply curled his lips, held the great sword in his right hand, and calmly raised his left fist. "You're too arrogant." Seeing Cealan's casual response, Kurubi's fury spiked. The blood rushing to his head made his punch even stronger. He wanted Cealan to understand the true power of fishmen and how tough their bodies were. Kurubi had already imagined the scene of Cealan's arm shattering under his blow. A cruel smile crept onto his face. The two fists collided. In an instant, a cloud of blood mist exploded. A severed forearm turned into shredded flesh, with fragments of bone flying through the air. A tall figure was sent hurtling backward, crashing into two other fishmen and knocking them to the ground. Kurubi, who now lay slumped on top of his companions, had lost all trace of his earlier cruelty. His face filled with horror as he stared at Cealan, trembling, unable to utter a word. The arm that had been destroyed was not Cealan's. It was Kurubi's own. The moment their fists met, Kurubi felt as though he had punched a mountain made of diamond. It was incomparably hard, with an overwhelming force behind it. In just one strike, Kurubi's so-called invincible body was crushed. His arm exploded, and his entire body was left incapacitated. He could do nothing but lie there, barely able to breathe. How is this possible? Kurubi was taken out instantly. The surrounding fishmen, who had been eagerly waiting to see Kurubi dominate the fight, were stunned. They could not believe what they had just witnessed. Kurubi was the top officer of the Arlong pirates, second only to Arlong himself. His specialty was fishman karate, and he was feared for it. Yet now, using his strongest technique at full power, he had been crippled by a single punch from Cealan. The sight terrified the fishmen. Cealan, who had taken Kurubi's strongest punch head-on, had not even taken a single step back. The only blood on him was from Kurubi. Nami and the villagers were all frozen in shock. Their minds were full of disbelief. The enemy they thought was invincible had been crushed so easily. It felt unreal. Even Nojiko, who had believed in Cealan's strength from the beginning, was stunned. She had thought Cealan would rely on his swordsmanship to deal with the enemy. She never imagined that he could defeat Kurubi with just a punch. After the initial shock came relief. With power like this, Cealan could definitely defeat the Arlong pirates. So this is the power of a fishman? How weak! How pathetic! Cealan clenched his left fist, calmly feeling the force behind Kurubi's strike. It was decent. About on par with Krieg. But to challenge him with that level of strength was laughable. Cealan's synchronization was with Heracles, the Heracles of Greek mythology. Even with only 37% synchronization, still far from full power, he already possessed strength comparable to a marine vice-admiral. For someone like Kurubi, defeating him was effortless. Cealan looked at the remaining fishmen and stepped forward, his great sword in hand. He hadn't come here just to deal with Kurubi. At this moment, Cealan looked like a demon risen from hell, the oppressive aura around him making the fishmen tremble with fear. The same fishmen who had acted so viciously in Kokoyashi village were now visibly shaking under Cealan's pressure. Cealan raised his great sword, but instead of cutting down with the blade, he used the flat of the sword to strike. He still intended to collect their bounties, so there was no need to make things too messy. Each swing of the sword landed squarely on a fishman's head. Cealan controlled his strength carefully. The flat of the blade was enough to crush their skulls without making too much of a mess. Naturally, the fishmen did not just sit and wait for death. Some tried to fight back, using their numbers in an attempt to overwhelm him. But it was useless. They attacked with fishman karate. However, compared to Kurubi's already inadequate skills, their techniques were even weaker. How could they possibly hurt Cealan? One by one, Cealan knocked them out with ease, like putting babies to sleep. Chu, the smooch fishman, fired high-pressure water bullets at Cealan. It was the same attack he had used to blast apart trees earlier. Cealan simply blocked with his great sword. The water bullets had no effect on the massive blade. Not even a tremor. Calmly, Cealan stepped forward and knocked Chu out with one clean strike. Haki, with his 6 arms and 6 swords, spun into action, creating an airtight wall of blades. Cealan responded with the back of his sword once again. Swinging down powerfully, the great sword created a strong gust of wind. Against Cealan's overwhelming force, Haki's defensive wall was as fragile as glass. The moment their weapons clashed, Haki's defense shattered. He was slammed straight into the ground, unable to move. Cealan knew that Haki had once saved Silver's Rayleigh's life. But so what? Even with such a powerful system backing him, if Cealan still hesitated to act, it would only be laughable. Every fishman with even a little strength among the Arlong pirates was crushed beneath Cealan's might. He's a demon. Run for your lives. The remaining fishmen no longer had the courage to fight. One by one, they turned and fled, hoping to escape. Cealan looked around. They were all just low-level grunts, worth nothing. He wasn't interested in playing any games of cat and mouse. I was hoping to keep the bodies intact. Cealan shook his head slightly, sounding almost disappointed. He raised his great sword. A wave-shaped air slash burst out from the blade, cutting through the fleeing fishmen instantly. Their bodies were split apart before they could even react. Just like that. Aside from Arlong himself, the Arlong pirates were completely wiped out. Like slicing through vegetables, Cealan had annihilated the pirate crew that had terrorized the East Blue. The fishmen who had once dominated the Konami Islands, feared by countless villagers, were nothing but ants before Cealan. The battle was completely one-sided. Or rather, it could not even be called a battle, it was a massacre. Is this the strength of the strongest bounty hunter in the East Blue? Nami was deeply shaken by Cealan's strength, her mind blank with disbelief. That's amazing. Coming back to her senses, Nami shouted excitedly. Cealan's godlike and devilish figure was firmly etched into the hearts of everyone present. To them, he was a hero. None of the villagers feared Cealan's killing. Because the ones he had killed were the pirates who had oppressed them for so long, and it was Cealan who had pulled them back from the edge of death. What they felt was only gratitude for Cealan and awe of his strength. As the villagers cheered loudly for Cealan's feat. Inside Arlong Park, Arlong stood on the balcony, on the verge of madness. It's over, it's all over. My brothers, my crew, my pirate group, everything is finished. Arlong crushed the wine glass in his hand, not caring as shards of glass cut into his palm. He had dreamed of building the Arlong Empire in the East Blue, enslaving humans alongside his brothers. Now, that dream had been shattered. Arlong's bloodshot eyes glared fiercely, his sharp teeth grinding together. The moment Kurubi had been crippled by Cealan's punch, Arlong had been ready to step in himself. But Cealan's movements had been too fast, and his strength too overwhelming. In less than half a minute, every single fishman present had been wiped out. Before Arlong could even make a move, his pirate crew had ceased to exist. Just moments earlier, he had been bragging confidently to Captain Nezumi, convinced that his men alone would be enough to deal with Cealan. Now, his men were all dead, and Arlong stood alone, a captain without a crew. The terror that Cealan brought to him felt exactly like the nightmare of the Grand Line all over again. The Cealan he now faced was not some rookie bounty hunter from the East Blue. He was like a terrifying warlord of the sea. I'll kill him! I'll kill him! I'll kill him! Arlong shouted incoherently, consumed by rage and madness. Those fishmen were not just his subordinates. They were his friends, his family. They had once sailed together as members of the Sun Pirates, sharing life and death for more than a decade. Their bond ran deep. Now, all of them were gone. No matter how strong Cealan was, Arlong would make him pay. Beside him, Captain Nezumi trembled uncontrollably. At this moment, he fully understood why the Navy had placed so much importance on recruiting Cealan. Nezumi had encountered monsters like this before. During his time reporting at Marine Headquarters, he had come across Admirals Akainu and Aokiji. The overwhelming pressure from just brushing past their presence had made him feel the terror of death. Right now, Nezumi viewed Cealan the same way as a seed destined for the position of Admiral, a rare powerhouse even among Vice-Admirals. Nezumi wouldn't even dare dream of standing against such a monster. He signaled to the 2 Marines at his side, quietly planning to slip away through the back. "Where do you think you're going?" A voice, filled with rage and madness, echoed behind him. Nezumi froze immediately. Arlong's red eyes locked onto him. Already driven into desperation, there was no way Arlong would allow Nezumi to escape so easily. "I was just leaving first, planning to find another chance to retaliate later." Nezumi stammered, trying to talk his way out. Of course, he had no intention of retaliating against Cealan. He was only trying to pacify Arlong for the moment. Is that so? No need to wait. Let's kill him right now. Arlong, mad with grief and rage, did not believe Nezumi's excuses. He wanted revenge, now. He knew full well that he could not defeat Cealan. But he could still use Nezumi as leverage. It didn't matter how famous Cealan was, or how corrupt Nezumi had been. If Cealan killed a marine officer in public, his relationship with the navy would immediately freeze. Arlong was sure that once word spread, the navy would abandon any plans of recruiting Cealan. They might even place a bounty on him. Not to mention, Arlong was a former member of the Sun Pirates and had ties with Jinbei, one of the 7 warlords of the sea. If Jinbei learned that Cealan had wiped out the Arlong pirates and killed one of his old crewmates, there was a high chance Jinbei would personally go after him. The thought of Cealan being hunted down made Arlong let out a low, sinister laugh. He threw the 2 marines off the balcony, then jumped down himself, carrying Nezumi under one arm. With his enhanced instincts and battle sense, Cealan immediately detected the movement overhead. Looking up, he saw 4 figures falling toward him from the sky. Cealan instantly understood Arlong's plan. But if Arlong thought such a cheap trick could trap him, he was severely underestimating him. Without hesitation, Cealan swung his great sword, releasing 2 powerful air slashes at the descending group. One slash struck the 2 marines, turning them into a mist of blood. The other slash hit Nezumi and sliced off half of Arlong's body along with him. The remains of Nezumi and the marines merged into the bloody mist drifting through the air, while Arlong, barely alive, continued to fall. Arlong's scheme had been crushed before it could even begin. The surrounding villagers had been wondering why Cealan had suddenly swung his sword into the sky. But then they saw the thick cloud of blood mist above. As Arlong crashed into the ground, he kicked up a cloud of dust. Half of his body was gone, only his head remaining intact. Blood spilled from Arlong's mouth as he stared wide-eyed. "Ha!" Cealan walked up to Arlong, his tone full of mocking disdain. Staring into Cealan's eyes, Arlong let out one final breath. He died with his eyes open, filled with regret and fear. In the end, Arlong finally recognized the true horror of Cealan. Not only was he unbelievably strong, but he was also dangerously intelligent. Arlong could not understand why such a monster existed in the East Blue. This was the kind of being that should only appear in the New World. This is Arlong. Thank goodness. Arlong is dead too. Even with half of his body missing and his face covered in blood and dust, the villagers immediately recognized Arlong. The crowd erupted. The Arlong pirates, who had terrorized Kokoyasi village for 8 long years, were completely wiped out. Arlong, the once invincible tyrant who had enslaved them, was now just a corpse lying broken on the ground. 2 air slashes had ended him before he could even properly appear on the battlefield. Such overwhelming strength was both terrifying and awe-inspiring. After a brief moment of stunned silence, the villagers burst into loud cheers. Long live the strongest bounty hunter in the East Blue! Long live Cealan! The shouts of the villagers echoed through Arlong Park like thunder. Although the sight of the blood mist overhead was unsettling, Nami could only chalk it up to the fishman's unique physique and heavy bleeding. She looked at Arlong's lifeless body, tears welling up in her eyes. The hatred she had carried for so many years, the grief for her adoptive mother Belmir, and all the pain she had endured were finally released. Thank you, Cealan. Nami threw her arms around Cealan, holding him tightly. She was willing to give everything to the man who had saved her and her people. Cealan remained silent, simply reaching out to gently soothe Nami's emotions. At night, Kokoyasi village held a grand celebration for the defeat of the Arlong pirates. To honor their hero, the villagers brought out the best ingredients from their homes and carefully prepared delicious food. At the bonfire party, the villagers presented their finest dishes to Cealan. They sang and danced around the bonfire, their faces filled with joy and excitement. For 8 long years under the oppression of the Arlong pirates, the villagers had lived in fear and despair. Now that their tormentors were gone, they fully released their emotions, dancing passionately in tribute to the hero who saved them, Cealan Alaric. As he enjoyed the delicious food, Cealan quietly watched the villagers' celebration. This is the atmosphere I prefer. Watching the villagers singing and dancing, a sense of accomplishment welled up in Cealan's heart. In the 6 months since arriving in this world, he had been either hunting pirates or traveling to hunt pirates. He had seen too much cruelty and bloodshed, the cold reality of survival in this lawless sea. Compared to witnessing pirates running wild, he would much rather see these innocent villagers smile freely. Before he realized it, Cealan had cleared every dish set before him. Although the food was not as exquisite as the meals at the Baritai, it carried a special flavor of warmth and sincerity. Cealan, thank you. Nami, who had been quietly watching him from a distance, approached with a plate of barbecue and set it in front of him. Cealan was a little surprised. He had been planning to go find Nami, but she came over first. The Arlong pirates are gone. What are your plans for the future? Cealan asked casually while continuing to eat. Nami froze at the question. Her plans? Her greatest dream until now had been to free the village, and that dream had finally been realized. Her other dream was to chart a map of the entire world. But how could she accomplish that alone? She thought about the Straw Hat Pirates. They had been good companions. But she had betrayed their trust. They would never accept her again. Besides, they were pirates. After the suffering caused by the Arlong pirates, Nami no longer wanted to be associated with any pirate crew. If possible, she wanted to follow Cealan. A bounty hunter so powerful and righteous was exactly the kind of partner she could believe in. But she had already owed him such a great debt. How could she trouble him any further? I'll stay in the East Blue and work to collect enough money to repay you. Nami made up her mind. Rather than joining pirates and risking becoming part of the evil she hated, she would give up that path. She owed Cealan too much. She would spend the rest of her life repaying that debt. I need a navigator more than I need berries. Cealan saw through Nami's thoughts at a glance. Thanks to his intervention, the Straw Hat Pirates had never come to aid Nami. Her impression of pirates remained that of Arlong, a vicious tyrant. The truth was, pirates like Luffy were the exception. Most pirates in this world were exactly like Arlong. Nami, are you willing to be my navigator? Cealan finished the last bite of barbecue, wiped his hands clean, and solemnly extended his right hand to Nami. That's wonderful. Nami's eyes widened in surprise, but without hesitation, she grasped Cealan's hand tightly. She had hoped to join him but had never expected the opportunity would come so quickly. In that moment, Nami felt incredibly lucky. Not only could she repay her debt, but she could also pursue her dream alongside Cealan. From now on, we're partners. Cealan smiled. The top navigator was now officially on his crew. Yet, Nami nodded enthusiastically, her eyes shining with determination. From the moment she first met Cealan at the Baritai, to the moment he saved her on the beach, and then watching him annihilate the Arlong pirates with overwhelming strength. Though their time together had been brief, Cealan's presence had already left an unshakable mark on Nami's heart. Seeing the two of them seal their agreement, the surrounding villagers and Nojiko smiled warmly. They were truly happy for Nami. With Cealan as her companion, they believed she would surely achieve her dream. Somewhere among the crowd, a villager passed 2 glasses of beer into Nami and Cealan's hands. They raised their drinks, joining the celebration once more. By the time the banquet ended, it was already early morning. Cealan spent the night resting in the room the villagers had prepared for him. The next morning, at sunrise, with the help of the villagers, Cealan prepared to set sail. His old boat remained docked at Kokoyasi village. It was far too small to handle a voyage into the Grand Line. Instead, his new ship would be the Arlong pirates' main vessel, the Shark Superb. It was an excellent, large ship. Much of the wealth Arlong had plundered over the years, aside from what was spent building Arlong Park, had gone into this ship. Compared to the Going Merry, the Shark Superb was noticeably larger, and its materials were far sturdier. The ship was fully outfitted with various facilities, including a kitchen, bathroom, sauna, and over a dozen luxurious rooms. The hull was reinforced with top-quality timber, second only to the legendary treasure tree Atom. This was the ship Arlong had built for himself, intended as the core of his pirate fleet. If his dream of establishing the Arlong Empire in the East Blue had failed, he had planned to sail this ship back to the Grand Line. Unfortunately for him, Arlong encountered Cealan. Now, this fine ship had become Cealan's new vessel. Cealan was quite satisfied. Compared to the luxury yachts of his previous life, this ship was no worse. Cealan, you should raise your flag on this ship and give it a new name. Nami wiped the sweat from her brow as she looked expectantly at Cealan. She and the villagers had worked hard to strip the ship of all traces of the Arlong pirates. Now that the ship belonged to Cealan, it was time to replace the emblem. Cealan picked up a paintbrush and, with just a few bold strokes, painted a new symbol on the blank flag. There was no skull, no flashy decorations. Only a massive greatsword hung at the center of the flag. It was his own weapon, a symbol of absolute power. Like the sword of Damocles, it represented the majesty and authority to judge all things. As for the name of the ship, Wind Rider. Cealan thought for a moment, then gave the ship its new name. Wind Rider, riding the wind and waves. What a great name! Compared to the chaotic names of many pirate ships, Wind Rider felt far more refined. Simple, but filled with ambition. To rise on the wind and soar straight to the summit of this world, that is the meaning of Wind Rider. Cealan smiled slightly, correcting Nami's understanding. His ambition was far greater than simply riding the waves. In this grand era of piracy, Cealan would ride the momentum and claim the world for himself. Nami stared at Cealan, dazed. Compared to a straw hat-wearing boy shouting about becoming Pirate King, the man before her radiated a far greater courage. Her heart beat faster as Cealan seemed to glow in her eyes. I'm going to pack my things. Blushing, Nami turned quickly, a little too embarrassed to face Cealan directly. To be continued.